10:23 a.m. That's the exact moment a phone call shattered my life, stealing James, my perfect husband, the meticulous engineer who double-checked everything. But the real shock? It wasn't his tragic death. It was my mother-in-law's stone-cold reply. "Can this wait until tomorrow?" They're busy celebrating Stephen's contract. James wasn't even cold yet when they tried to steal 70% of his life insurance. His legacy for our 9-year-old son, Liam. They saw our tragedy as a literal payday. Can you believe that? But here's the twist. They had no idea James prepared a legal shield as solid as the concrete he engineered. He foresaw their betrayal, and they definitely didn't see Liam coming. Our 9-year-old was about to walk into that courtroom with a 3D printed message that would bring them to their knees in shame. Could one heartbroken widow and her young son protect James's legacy? Could we turn this wreckage into something bigger? A safety legacy for hundreds of workers? What defines family when everything falls apart? If you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most, or if you've had to fight alone for your little family, you need to subscribe right now. Join me as we fight for James's justice, continue his legacy, and prove love always crushes greed. Drop a comment with justice so Sarah and Liam know we are not alone. This fight is for all of us. The phone slipped from my grasp, shattering on the kitchen tile. The room spun. All I could think of was James, the man who laughed over star-shaped toast this morning. The man who promised Liam he'd be home early. He was just gone. I stumbled into the living room where Liam was building Legos. His brown eyes, exactly like James's, looked up at me. "Mom, why are you so pale? Is Dad back yet?" His innocent voice shredded the silence. How could I tell a 9-year-old his hero wasn't coming home? I pulled Liam into a hug, breathing in the scent of his hair. Dad had an emergency trip," I choked out. I hated lying to him, but then the phone rang again. A formal, emotionless voice from the hospital needed me to come in to finalize necessary procedures. Those cold words were physical knots tightening in my chest. Driving to Northwestern Memorial, Chicago sped past my window in a blur. I saw happy families by the lake, couples holding hands, and felt like I was in a parallel universe. Their happiness just sharpened my pain. The hospital hallway was freezing, sterile. The fluorescent lights shone a harsh, unforgiving white. At the end of that cold hallway, a gray door waited. The door to an undeniable truth. Back in our Lincoln Park living room, Liam and I huddled on the sofa. The lamplight hit our family photos. The smell of that forgotten peanut butter jar still lingered. Liam held me tight, like we were the only two people left fighting the world. How could his grandparents be so absent when we were utterly broken? Margaret never called back. No one from their side showed up. If you've been abandoned by family when you needed them most, you know that suffocating, crushing feeling. I sat there watching Liam sleep, his tears soaking my shirt. The rain outside our Chicago home just confirmed the harsh truth. It was only us. As Liam drifted off, my phone buzzed again. A text from the insurance company. "Mrs. Greenfield, we need an urgent meeting regarding a beneficiary issue with James's contract. There's a serious confusion to clarify." My shattered heart clenched. James always told me he prepared everything. He double-checked every cable, every bill. Why was there a confusion now? I sat in the living room, hugging a cold mug of coffee, remembering the first time I met James. He was at a technical conference talking about safety. His eyes were bright, lit up with passion. I fell in love with him right after that awkward handshake. Now, those eyes were closed forever. We married young at 25. Everyone told us to live life first, but James was my life. After college, he joined an engineering firm in Chicago. He stood out because he was meticulous. He checked blueprints twice. He'd talk to the workers. He knew their kids' names, who liked baseball, who played piano. His dedication made me love him more every morning when he brewed coffee. James wasn't just a good engineer. He was a good human. In our Lincoln Park home, the hardwood floors were covered in Liam's toys. We had 6 years of bliss before deciding to have a child. But that journey was rough. 3 miscarriages, Dozens of doctor appointments. One failed IVF. Every time James held my hand. We'll get through this, Sarah. When I finally got pregnant with Liam, it still wasn't easy. I was hospitalized for the last 2 months. James worked remotely, bringing me tea, rubbing my shoulders, reading technical books to both of us. He'd joke, "This kid needs to know how Dad builds bridges." When Liam was born, James held him, tears streaming down his face. "You're my entire world." For 9 years, we were complete. James taught Liam 3D design on the computer. He didn't miss a single baseball game or parent meeting. Our house was full of laughter, the smell of James's star-shaped toast, and movie nights cuddled on the sofa. But there were signs we missed. James complained about chest pain, blaming stress. Shortness of breath? He said he wasn't running enough. Doctors warned him about high blood pressure, but we dismissed it as normal for a 38-year-old engineer. Pills? Low-sodium jogging. Familiar advice we ignored, thinking we had all the time in the world to fix it. That morning started like any other. James made his star toast. I packed Liam's lunch. He kissed us goodbye, promising to be back early for Liam's art show, then drove off to the Loop construction site. "Don't forget the unsweetened peanut butter," he said, smiling. That last casual request is a knife twisting in my gut. 10:23 a.m. The phone rang and everything broke. It was Tom, James's colleague, his voice shaking. "Sarah, equipment failure." It hit him. "Ambulance is taking him now." I dropped my tea mug. The sound of the porcelain shattering was my heart breaking. I called Emily to get Liam, then drove to Northwestern Memorial, running every red light, praying. But the heavy silence in that empty hallway, the look on the doctor's face, it told me it was already too late. James was officially gone at 10:45 a.m. Just minutes before I even got to Northwestern Memorial, that hospital hallway was brutal. Cold, sterile. The fluorescent lights flickered over the icy tile floor. All I could hear was the nurse's footsteps, a rhythmic, indifferent clock ticking. I touched the frigid wall. My skin felt like it was freezing shut, mirroring the panic in my heart. The doctor's voice was flat, totally clinical. "Workplace accident. Machinery failed. Crushed him. We couldn't save him." As if those words could somehow fix my broken heart. I looked at James. His face was peaceful, but his chest wasn't moving. I grabbed his hand. It was still warm, like his life was still there, just waiting for a wake-up call. I waited for his eyes to flutter open. I waited for him to say, "It was a bad joke, honey." But he didn't move. My world just shattered into jagged, unfixable pieces. A nurse handed me a stack of papers. The funeral home called asking about cremation, about his favorite blue jacket. Every single question felt like a deep stab. The hardest part wasn't signing those papers. It was driving home to face Liam. How do you tell your 9-year-old that the dad who made him star-shaped toast is gone forever? I literally had no script for that. I pulled the car over right by Liam's school, next to the old oak tree where we used to have family picnics. The cold Chicago wind hit me, bringing the heavy, unavoidable truth. I grabbed Liam's tiny hand. Mine was shaking on the steering wheel. "Honey, something really awful happened," I started. My throat clamped shut. Dad had an accident at the construction site. The machinery failed and he didn't make it. Liam just stared. He looked totally lost. "Can't the doctor fix Dad?" he asked. That simple, innocent question ripped me apart. "No, sweetie. The accident was too bad. He's gone." Liam stared at me, trying to process the unprocessable. Silence stretched out. Only the sound of cars rushing by, ignoring our devastation. Then his voice broke, shaky and terrified. "So he's not coming home ever?" I just nodded, tears choking me. Liam screamed. That sound just tore through the sky. His whole world shattered. He launched himself into my arms, his small body shaking uncontrollably. "I want my dad. Please, Mom, bring him back." We sat in the car, totally lost. Two strangers parked by a curb. Walking inside, my eyes locked on James's desk clock. It was frozen at 10:23 a.m., the exact minute Tom called. The wall clock was frozen too. That second hand felt like a knife blade stuck in my own chest. The smell of his unsweetened peanut butter lingered, cold and lonely, a constant reminder. Later, after the headlights swept over Liam's tear-streaked face, I got him to sleep. He was clutching James's denim jacket, the one that still smelled like his dad's sweat. Once he was out, I slid onto the bathroom floor, locked the door, and let the grief drown me. The pain was a literal fire in my chest. I needed my mother-in-law. I needed James's parents. I needed someone to pull me out of this dark place. I dialed Margaret, shaking. She picked up. I could hear jazz music blaring. Stephen's contract party was going off. She sighed. "Sarah, can I call you back?" "Stephen's party is packed." I choked out the words. "Margaret, James died this morning. Construction accident. He's gone." I waited for any shred of comfort. There was a pause. I heard her cover the phone, whispering to someone. When she came back, her voice was frigid. "Oh dear. How awful. Are you sure? Could it be a mistake?" I had to convince my own mother-in-law her son was dead. It was the deepest cut of all. I just hung up, sitting there in the bathroom darkness. Margaret never called back. No one did. The pain wasn't just losing James. It was the total indifference. The cold shoulder from the people I called family, leaving us alone in our darkest hour. "Sarah, this is a huge shock, but we're in the middle of Stephen's contract party." Margaret's voice was barely audible over the loud jazz and clinking glasses from that Evanston restaurant. "Everyone's here. The venue was booked last month. Can't you just manage for tonight? We'll come by tomorrow." I just froze. My hand was shaking on the phone. His party was officially more important than James's death. Then George, James's father, took the phone. His tone was totally condescending. "Sarah, this is terrible. But what about James's construction contract? Have you checked with the company?" No comfort. Just a business question when his son was gone. "I can't believe you just asked that," I fired back, my voice breaking. "My husband is dead. Liam lost his dad. To them, our grief was just a nuisance call." "Where are you, Sarah?" George demanded like a drill sergeant. "Stephen's party has been planned forever. People flew in. We can't just bail. Just calm down. Calm down." How could I fold my shattered heart into a neat little box? "Forget I called," I said, hanging up. My hand was shaking violently. The Chicago rain outside seemed to swallow my cries. Minutes later, my phone blew up. "Tom, James's coworker. I'm gutted. Let me know anything you need." Jennifer from my office texted, "I'm on my way." My high school friend Anna just sent a heart emoji. Strangers cared more than James's own blood. They were the actual headlights cutting through the darkness in Lincoln Park. I sat there, holding my cold mug, remembering the first time I met James. He was giving a talk on site safety, his eyes burning with passion. I fell for him from that awkward handshake on. But right then my phone buzzed. A text from William. "We need to discuss Liam's financial future." My heart seized up. Even in my favorite memory of James, the shadow of their greed was already haunting me. We married at 25. Our first house in Lincoln Park was a dump, but James's laugh made it home. William and Margaret? They refused to help us. They poured everything into Stephen. That first night was endless. Liam had nightmares. He woke up screaming for his dad. I lay next to him, stroking his hair, telling him stories. How James taught him 3D design. Called him my junior engineer. Liam fell asleep, clutching James's jacket. It still smelled like him. I stayed awake all night. James's absence was a black hole. Morning came, and the pain reminded me, this is your life now. Margaret called once to ask the time of the funeral and if she should wear black. Nothing about Liam. No offer to help. I was drowning in paperwork, trying to hold Liam together while I was actively falling apart. Those days were a Chicago rain-soaked blur. I spent those long nights in the dark, clutching James's shirt and sobbing. The grief was a tidal wave. Liam was safe asleep, unaware his mom was wrestling with pure darkness. The day of the funeral was beautiful, cruelly beautiful. Liam insisted on wearing his blue t-shirt because Dad said I look coolest in this color. I helped him comb his hair, just like James did. We got to the funeral home early. The wooden chairs were cold. The smell of lilies was suffocating. I gripped Liam's hand, waiting. I looked at the white lilies around the casket and suddenly remembered James's voice 6 months ago. You know, I'm really worried about the insurance contract. Dad keeps asking too many questions. That memory was screaming in my head. A late, terrible warning. James's coworkers showed up first. Casual shirts, red eyes. They hugged Liam. They told stories. How James checked the machines twice for safety. How he always made coffee for the Monday crew. Margaret and George swore they'd be early. Then 20 minutes before the service, they texted, "Traffic jam. Stephen needs help getting his suit together." Their indifference was a knife twisting. James's colleagues sat with us. They were the real family. At the Chicago funeral home, I stood by James's casket. My black dress felt heavy. Liam clung to my hand, tiny in his blue t-shirt. White lilies filled the air. A soft hymn whispered from the cold wooden seats. William and Margaret arrived late, scrolling through their phones, whispering about Stephen's contract party. "We need to get ready for Stephen," Margaret hissed, her voice sharp. To them, my grief was just a scheduling conflict. Their cold indifference was a knife, contrasting sharply with George and Linda. George grabbed my shoulder, his eyes truly red, real pain spilling out. Linda knelt by Liam. "You were your dad's pride," she told him. They brought homemade cookies, the smell of butter cutting through the heavy air. Meanwhile, William pretended to wipe his eyes and Margaret checked texts. The funeral was just a meeting they had to get through. When it was my turn for the eulogy, I was terrified I'd collapse. My legs shook walking onto the wooden podium. I looked at the casket. Liam sat there, eyes so much like James, shattered but tough. I breathed deep, talking about James's heart. How he double-checked machines to keep the crew safe. How he put family first, always racing home to work on 3D designs with Liam. I talked about James making coffee, teasing Liam with engineering jokes, about him reading stories on the construction site. Then, out of nowhere, William stood up, his voice cutting the silence like glass. "Sarah, we need to talk about the insurance contract. Right now." The whole room went dead quiet. They couldn't even wait for James to be put to rest. I told you they had no soul. After the service, I had to face the brutal new reality, paperwork, insurance, and a future without James. With a pile of files, I drove to the insurance office downtown, past the gleaming Chicago skyscrapers. My eyes were bruised with sleep deprivation, but I clung to hope. James was meticulous. He had to have secured our future. The agent, a guy named Craig in a gray suit, flipped through the papers. He shook his head. Sorry, Mrs. Greenfield. There's an issue with the beneficiary file. A key identity verification is missing. Mr. James might have forgotten to update it." His voice was flat, and his eyes avoided mine. I froze. "James? Forget something related to Liam's future? Never. What exactly is missing?" I asked, my voice thin. Craig shrugged. "Just a formality. Send the extra docs and we'll process it. Might take a few weeks." "Back home in Lincoln Park," I told Tom, James's best friend from the Loop site. Tom frowned. His eyes narrowed, sharp like he was checking machinery. "That doesn't sound right, Sarah. James never missed anything important. Let me check with an industry contact." A week later, Tom called back. His voice was urgent. "Sarah, someone contacted the insurance company 2 months ago asking to update James's beneficiary. They were denied because they lacked power of attorney. They wouldn't give a name, but the number was linked to an account for W.M. Greenfield." I went cold. William Marcus Greenfield, my father-in-law. My hand shook so hard my teacup rattled. Not only had they abandoned James, but William had been eyeing Liam's insurance money before James even died. The betrayal was a twisting knife, cutting through my grief straight to pure rage. At the funeral reception, I overheard William talking near the buffet table. Sandwiches lay next to wilting lilies. James was great on the site, William told a guest. That contract was huge, plus the savings. Sarah will be fine. I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to scream. Now I knew why he was so confident. He thought he'd already stolen Liam's legacy. I was exhausted. I just wanted to disappear with Liam. William and Margaret did nothing, sitting in the corner, accepting condolences like they were the stars of a play. James's construction crew, in their simple shirts, brought food, poured coffee, and stacked chairs. I thanked them mechanically, feeling totally hollow, drifting in a thick emotional fog. George and Linda, though shattered by James's loss, were a lifeline. Linda took care of Liam, shielding him from the overly enthusiastic guests. George quietly cleaned, stacked trays, and stayed until the funeral home lights dimmed. Their kindness was a hug, but it couldn't fill the deep hole, especially knowing William's plot. Tom pulled me aside. His voice was low. "Sarah, don't worry about the insurance yet. James set everything up carefully. You and Liam are taken care of. I'll keep an eye on this." I nodded, but his words were just wind. William and Margaret got up, saying they had to prep for Stephen's party. No hug, just a trail of expensive cologne. But now they weren't just indifferent, they were a threat. Emily, George, and Linda stayed, solid as pillars. Linda got a blanket for me on the sofa. "We're here if you need us," she said, hugging me. But lying next to Liam that night, the room lit only by the faint moonlight in Lincoln Park, listening to his soft breathing, I knew the fight to protect James's legacy had just started, and William wasn't going to give up easily. The people who should have been my rock in that crisis proved they were totally worthless. It was 2 weeks after the funeral. I was stuck at our oak kitchen table in Lincoln Park, fighting James's health insurance paperwork. The pendant light was dim. Rain hammered the window, a constant reminder of how alone I was. Liam was at school, his first full week back without his dad. The doorbell rang, snapping my focus. Liam's teacher had just sent an update text. They were tracking him closely. I was so thankful for that small kindness because I was barely keeping it together. I checked the peephole. Margaret and William stood there. Margaret smoothed her sweater. William was already glued to his phone. "We just stopped by," Margaret announced when I opened the door. She walked right past me, no invite needed. Margaret put on her fake look of concern. But William was already scanning the living room, checking inventory. His eyes locked on the new TV James bought. I watched him nod slightly, calculating its value. Their cold, casual appraisal made my gut instantly drop. "Liam's at school? Good. We can talk frankly." I made Earl Grey tea, trying to play the host. I was running on empty, but it was instinct. William checked out James's custom-built bookshelf, the one carved with Liam's name. His eyes fell on the frozen clock. "Is this broken?" he asked. I shook my head. It stopped the minute James died. Margaret looked away, maybe shame, or maybe just figuring angles. "Nice piece," William said, running a finger along the wood. James was always meticulous. "Yeah," I whispered, the memory of James slicing right through me. I brought the tea out, trying to hide my total unease from Margaret's sharp stare. After some strained small talk about Liam's school, William cleared his throat. "Showtime." "Sarah, we need to discuss your situation," he began, placing his cup precisely on the coaster. "Your financial situation," Margaret clarified, giving him the cue. "You have to adjust to life without James now." I just blinked. "What are you even talking about?" James left the insurance and savings for Liam and me. "That's exactly what we need to discuss." William leaned forward. "Stephen's company is struggling. We need a large loan from James's policy, and possibly the construction settlement." Margaret nodded. "Stephen needs this cash to save the business. James didn't contribute like he did." I looked at William. This was the man who raised James. Now he was trading that memory for profit. "James was your son," I choked out. "How can you do this to him?" I gripped my mug. It was like being sucker punched. "How much?" I asked, my voice deadly level. 60%? I stared him down. "Are you serious right now? You want to take money from your orphaned grandson to bail out Stephen's business?" William sighed. "Don't be dramatic, Sarah. This is for the family." "Family?" I scoffed. Real family doesn't demand cash when a husband just died. Plus the construction settlement if it happens, William pressed on, his eyes glittering like he was closing a deal. That helps Stephen, and you and Liam will still have plenty. Their sheer nerve left me speechless. James wasn't even cold, and they were trying to steal his future for Stephen. 60% of the insurance, and the settlement, I repeated slowly, my eyes burning with rage. To save Stephen's company, using the money left by the son you abandoned for his party? Margaret finally winced, but William was smooth. Sarah, let's keep the emotion out of this. This is a practical plan. We did show up at the funeral. How incredibly generous of you to attend your son's funeral, I said, dripping with pure sarcasm. And now you want 60% of his life insurance, plus the settlement, so Stephen can keep getting rich, while Liam lost his father and I lost my husband? Margaret cut in. We helped you buy this house. We paid for the wedding. You owe us. Owe you? I repeated. That hit me harder than the cash demand. James died and you call this a cash opportunity? You haven't once asked about Liam. You haven't once dried my tears. This money is Liam's. It's for James's son's future, not Stephen's. I stood up, slamming my hands onto the counter. Get out of my house, now! Margaret tried to protest, but the look in my eyes shut her down. They left without a goodbye, leaving behind cold tea and a giant empty hole in my heart. I sat back down, staring at the framed photo. James was smiling next to Liam. The teacher texted, Liam is doing well. He drew a bridge today. I closed my eyes, clinging to that tiny sign of hope. But James's absence was still swallowing me whole. The battle was definitely on. In the Lincoln Park living room, my phone buzzed. Tom's voice was tense through the speaker. Sarah, William just contacted the insurance company. He tried to change the beneficiary to Stephen, Tom said, his voice strained. I sat in the gray armchair, the cold Earl Grey tea on the table, my heart pounding. Margaret and William, standing near the Chicago landscape painting, looked at me as if they were just visiting for tea. How dare you? I whispered, trembling. You betrayed James. I screamed, the rage exploding and pushing me to my feet. You're not just demanding 60% of the insurance and the construction settlement. Now you're secretly trying to swap the beneficiary to save Stephen's company. William's face hardened. Don't be so dramatic, Sarah. James knew the worksite was dangerous. Stephen needs the cash more than Liam does. The pain that had previously numbed me now crystallized into a sharp clarity. Get out of my house right now, I yelled, pointing to the door, my voice shaking with fury. Margaret opened her mouth. Sarah, calm down. We are family. Family? You abandoned me and Liam for Stephen's contract party, and now you betray James's last wishes. They were stunned. They had never seen me lose my temper. I had always been the obedient daughter-in-law, avoiding conflict, while Stephen was pampered. We just want what's best for the family, William said stiffly, walking toward the door. We are your in-laws. We deserve respect. Respect must be earned, I shot back, my eyes blazing with anger. Get out now, before Liam comes home and sees how his grandparents betrayed his father. They left. Margaret mumbled about ingratitude. William said something about revisiting our relationship. From Tom's vantage point, standing outside and hearing the argument, he saw a Sarah completely different from the gentle person James described. This wasn't the weak woman James felt he had to protect, but a mother ready to fight for her son's future. Tom silently thanked James for choosing the right person and vowed to keep his promise to his friend. I closed the door, sliding down to the floor, shaking under the faint yellow light from the street lamp filtering through the rain-streaked window. The cold tea on the table was a reminder of their indifference. The bottomless pit in my heart widened, but the anger was a rare fire that kept me from sinking. James had protected me and Liam, and I would not let Margaret or William steal that legacy. That afternoon, picking up Liam from school, I noticed he was quieter than usual. Rain tapped against the car window. Liam spoke up. Mom, why did Grandma and Grandpa come over today? My heart clenched. You saw them? The teacher let me out to the playground and I saw their car through the window. His innocent question made me sick. Did they bring us anything? No, honey, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. They came to talk about grown-up things with me. Liam looked down at his hands. They wanted Dad's money, didn't they? I was shocked. Why would you think that? I heard Grandpa talking at the funeral that we would have a lot of money because Dad was gone. The fact that my 8-year-old son heard that statement shattered my heart. Liam, your dad made sure you and I are taken care of, I said, fighting back tears. But money can't replace Dad. Liam nodded, his eyes sad. I want Dad more than all the money in the world. Me too, sweetie, I whispered, squeezing his hand. The rain still fell, but in that moment, I knew I had to be strong for Liam. Even though my heart was broken, that night I called Emily, James's close friend who had just returned to Chicago. I told her about William's insurance plot, the 60% demand, and the attempted settlement grab. What? Emily exploded. They dared to betray James like that? That's insane, Sarah. I'm worried they won't stop, I said, my voice thick with emotion. William is very stubborn, especially when Stephen is involved. Emily paused, then spoke slowly. James told me about his financial plan. He wanted Liam to go to college to have a secure future. He would be furious knowing his parents were stealing Liam's legacy. The pain of missing James surged back. I'm going to talk to Tom about the legal situation to prepare, I said. Good idea, Emily agreed. Sarah, don't let them manipulate you. James protected you and Liam for a reason. The next morning, I sat in David's office in downtown Chicago, looking out at the sun glinting off the river. The oak desk was polished, and the smell of coffee drifted from the machine. David, James's friend and lawyer, flipped through the will and insurance documents. His eyes were serious. I'm not surprised about William and Margaret, he said, his voice low. This kind of thing happens more than you think. But relax, James made everything watertight. You are the sole beneficiary of the life insurance and retirement fund. Liam is the secondary beneficiary if you aren't around. Can William sue? I asked, my hand gripping the table edge. My heart felt like a lead weight. David shook his head, his glasses catching the light. The will is clear, legally drawn up. James was of sound mind when he signed. Biological parents have no automatic inheritance right from an adult son, especially when there is a wife and child. They have no legal leg to stand on. David's words were a shaft of light through the fog, but as I left his office, walking past the Chicago skyscrapers, my phone kept buzzing. Texts from William, Margaret, and even Stephen, William wrote, We need to talk like adults. Call back immediately. Margaret texted, Sarah, I raised you better than this. Family comes first. Stephen, the one who didn't even look up at James's funeral, typed, You are so selfish. Our parents deserve better treatment. Their audacity almost made me laugh, but only tears came. They, the ones who abandoned Liam and me for Stephen's contract party, dared to call me selfish? That evening, in the Lincoln Park kitchen, Liam and I sat at the wooden table. Candlelight flickered from a vanilla-scented candle. The stew Emily brought was still warm, herbs scenting the air. My phone vibrated. William was calling. I let it go to voicemail. His voice, cold as stone, cut through the quiet. Sarah, family meeting at our place. Evanston, Sunday, 2 p.m. This is family business. Bring Liam. I put the phone down. The beef stew suddenly tasted like ash. Dragging Liam into this fight was the last thing I wanted, but perhaps it was time to face them directly and end this if necessary. With David's reassurance, I felt a stronger resolve to protect James's legacy. Was that Grandpa? Liam asked, pushing a carrot around his plate, his brown eyes, so like James's, clouded with worry. Yes, honey, I replied, keeping my voice steady. He wants us to come to their house on Sunday. Liam was silent for a moment, then looked up. Do we really have to go, Mom? His question cut deep. But before I could answer, Liam opened his laptop and turned the screen toward me. On it was a 3D design of a bridge with the words, Real Family, Mom plus Liam, Money Not Included. I'm ready, Mom, Liam said, his eyes bright. I want to tell them what Dad taught me. Liam nodded, his gaze gleaming with the same determination James had when defending his beliefs. Okay, but can I bring one thing? I have an idea. What idea? I asked, intrigued by his seriousness. I want Grandpa and Grandma to know how important Dad was and that you're not alone, Liam said firmly. Can I use the laptop after dinner? I agreed, wondering what my 9-year-old was plotting. But I trusted that whatever it was, it came from the good heart and strong values James instilled in him. In the days that followed, the grief over losing James, a heavy stone on my chest, was compounded by anger at William and Margaret's betrayal. In quiet moments after Liam was asleep, I recalled old injustices. Like the time James wanted to open his safety consulting firm, and William and Margaret scoffed, saying investment belonged in Stephen's tech startup. Or when our roof leaked, and they refused help, saying they needed money for Stephen's new car. Meanwhile, George and Linda, James's actual brother and sister-in-law, even though they weren't wealthy, sent a small check with a handwritten note. We believe in you both. The small cuts, once seemingly insignificant, now formed a clear, cruel picture. I called Emily, James's close friend and my biggest support. Am I overreacting? I asked, after telling her about the 60% insurance demand. No, Sarah, Emily replied, her voice suddenly grave. But there's something I have to tell you. Stephen just hired a lawyer specializing in estate disputes. They are gearing up for war, and you need to know. My heart stopped. How do you know? Because that lawyer is my ex-husband. He called to warn me. But looking at Liam, sitting at his desk, designing his 3D plan on the laptop, his eyes shining just like James's, I knew this battle wasn't just about money. It was about James's legacy, about Liam, and about me. Learning how to stand tall, just as James always wanted. Am I overreacting? Or is the grief of losing James just making everything worse? Sarah, Emily said on the phone, her voice firm. If William and Margaret did that to me, I would have cut them off already. What they're doing is not just wrong, it's cruel. Her strong affirmation felt like a hug from afar. That evening, I called Tom, James's close colleague. He shared his plan to take a few months off from the construction site to come stay with me and Liam. James made me promise, Tom said, his voice thick with emotion. When you were pregnant with Liam, he told me if anything ever happened, I had to look after you both. I'm keeping that promise. Tom's loyalty to James was a light in the darkness. While William and Margaret betrayed their son's final wishes, Tom prioritized his promise to his friend. The contrast was heartbreaking, yet warming. Meanwhile, Liam was quietly focused on a project in his room. He sat at his desk, drawing something on his laptop, the screen light reflecting on his serious face. What are you working on? I asked, standing at the doorway. Liam looked up, flashing a mysterious smile. Something important for Sunday. I didn't press him, trusting that whatever he was doing stemmed from the good heart James had instilled in him. On Saturday, I decided to review James's financial papers. I wanted to be well prepared for the family meeting in Evanston, to understand everything so I wouldn't be manipulated by William and Margaret. James was always careful with money, keeping everything neatly organized in the filing cabinet in the corner of the Lincoln Park garage. In the corner of the garage, the clock was still silent on the shelf. I touched the cold glass, wondering if James ever thought that this clock would become a witness to his passing. I stepped into the garage. The smell of oil mixed with old sawdust. In the faint light from the single bulb, I flipped through folders until my hand touched a leather-bound notebook. My name written on it in James's familiar handwriting. My heart pounded as I opened the notebook. My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, it means the risk on the construction site has happened. I don't want you to worry, but I have updated the will and insurance to protect you and Liam. The entire insurance and retirement fund belongs to you. Liam has a separate fund for college and his future. This is important, Sarah. William once asked me about an investment opportunity, which was really asking for money. I refused, but I worry that after I'm gone, he will pressure you to hand over the money. Don't let them do that. Live your life to the fullest, and know that my greatest happiness was being your husband and Liam's father." I read those words in silence. Grief and gratitude surged, mixing into a choked feeling in my throat. I closed the notebook, my palms sweaty. Now I knew everything, and I was ready. Sunday morning arrived, bringing a tense atmosphere like before a storm. I flipped through the pages of the notebook, reading James's handwriting. Did he know the danger in advance? Had he prepared for the worst? Would this small notebook be the key to all the mysteries, or would it open darker doors? Liam was quieter than usual, wearing James's favorite blue t-shirt, his small shoulders carrying a look of determination, like his father preparing for a site inspection. "Are you sure you want to go?" I asked one last time as we prepared to leave the Lincoln Park house. "You can stay with Emily." Liam shook his head, his eyes bright. "No, Mom, I want to go." His determination gave me strength, but it also made my heart ache, knowing my 9-year-old was about to face the people who betrayed his father. With the information in James's notebook, I immediately called David, our lawyer. "Is Liam's fund safe?" I asked, my voice trembling. David reassured me over the phone. "Absolutely. The fund is established airtight. No one can touch it, not even William or Margaret. Bring the notebook to the family meeting. It's not legally necessary, but it will help you assert James's wishes if they try to pressure you." David's confirmation felt like a surge of strength. Now, I was truly ready. "I have to go, Mom, for Dad." On the way to William and Margaret's house in Evanston, Liam clutched a small box, refusing to reveal what was inside. "It's a message from Dad and me," he said, his voice firm. As our car drove onto the familiar suburban street, I noticed a few extra cars parked outside, belonging to William's cousins. People I'd met at Christmas parties. They had invited the extended family, likely thinking I would be unable to refuse in front of a crowd. "Ready?" I asked Liam, my hands on the steering wheel, the sunset streaming through the oak trees. Liam nodded, his 9-year-old face unusually serious. "I'm ready, Mom. Don't worry." We got out of the car hand in hand like two warriors preparing for battle. Liam's small strength warmed my heart amidst the emotional storm. Before I could ring the bell, the door flew open. Margaret stood there, dressed in a tidy wool dress like she was going to church, her face painted with false concern. "Sarah, Liam, come in. Everyone is waiting in the living room." We followed her through the long hallway, the scent of freshly baked cookies wafting from the kitchen. The spacious living room, where I had once eaten Thanksgiving dinner, now felt like an arena. William sat in his armchair, like a judge presiding over a courtroom. Stephen was leaning against the sofa, scrolling on his phone, not even bothering to look up. Scattered around were Aunt Ellen, Uncle Richard, and William's cousin Mark, with his wife Susan. "Thank you for coming," William said, his voice rigid as if opening a company meeting. "We have important family business to discuss." I stood tall, keeping Liam close. "Before we begin," I said, my voice calm, "I want to make one thing clear. Whatever you have to say it in front of Liam. He has the right to know what's happening with his family." Margaret frowned. "Sarah, this isn't appropriate for a child. If it's not appropriate for him to hear, then it's not appropriate for you to demand," I countered, my eyes fixed on her. "This is his future." William cleared his throat, signaling the start. "All right, let's get down to business. Margaret and I have discussed the family's financial situation. As you know, we've helped you a great deal, from the wedding party to the small loan for the Lincoln Park house." I bit back my anger, remembering that loan came with interest, while Stephen got a brand new car gifted to him. But now was not the time to dredge up the past. "We feel," William continued, "that with the large sum from James's life insurance and the potential construction settlement, you should share it to help the family. We propose a reasonable distribution that secures our retirement and supports Stephen, who is facing difficulties with his failing company." Stephen looked up, flashing a smug smile, as if James's death was his chance to regain his glory. "I've prepared a breakdown," William said, handing me a printed sheet. "We propose 60% of the insurance and settlement for Margaret and me, plus an additional 10% for Stephen. I scanned the paper, shocked at the specific numbers. They knew the exact value of James's policy, probably through Uncle Richard, who worked in construction. You want 70% of the money meant to secure Liam's future after he lost his father? I asked, my voice ice cold. The money James left for us with a clear will? Family has to help each other, Sarah, Margaret interjected, her voice falsely sweet. We are getting old. Medical costs are rising. You have to think about the bigger picture. The bigger picture? I repeated, my anger flaring. Like how you refused to leave Stephen's contract party when James died. That picture? The room fell into an awkward silence. Aunt Ellen bowed her head, her cheeks flushing, seemingly ashamed on William and Margaret's behalf. At least someone had a conscience. Sarah, William said condescendingly, we apologized for that incident. But you have to understand, that party had important partners flying in. I was about to retort, but Liam stepped forward, clutching his box. I have something to say, the boy spoke, his voice clear yet resolute, making everyone turn to look. My heart twisted. I didn't want him to fight this battle, but this was his fight. I swallowed my tears, knowing that if I spoke, I would ruin this moment. Liam opened the box, taking out a small 3D printed model of a construction project, placing it on the walnut mantelpiece in front of the fireplace. This is a design from Dad and me, he said, his eyes shining like James's. Dad's legacy isn't money, it's family love. The room fell silent, only the crackle of wood in the fireplace audible. Grandma and Grandpa didn't comfort Mom when Dad died, Liam continued, his voice steady. They didn't ask about me. But now they want Dad's money. My mom's parents, though not rich, still helped fix our roof. You didn't help at all, so why are you asking for money? William bowed his head, clutching the arm of his chair. Margaret was stunned, her mouth open, unable to utter a word. Aunt Ellen wiped her eyes. Uncle Richard looked away. Liam's honest words, like a small engineer inheriting his father's spirit, shook the room. I put my hand on his shoulder, overflowing with pride, yet aching that my 9-year-old had to stand up to protect his father's legacy. You could have left Stephen's contract party, I replied, my voice sharp as a knife. But you chose to stay. Arguing like this gets us nowhere, Stephen interjected, looking up from his phone. You are wealthy now while we are struggling. Mom and Dad sacrificed for James his whole life. They deserve to rest. What about Liam's future? I asked, my voice rising even though I tried to stay calm. Do you think James died so you could buy new cars or go on vacation? That money is for his son, for his life. William shot up to his feet, his face beet red. Listen to me, Sarah, we are your in-laws. We raised James, gave your son a family. You owe us respect. Respect? I scoffed bitterly. You haven't shown genuine care for me or Liam since James died. All you want is our money. That's not true, Margaret protested, her voice trembling. We care about you, Sarah. We are just being practical. Practical? I repeated, my anger blazing. Practical would be asking how your grandson is after losing his father. Bringing food, helping me clean the house, or holding me when I cry. Not stalking the insurance money like this. The room sank into a heavy silence. Uncle Richard lowered his head, clearly uncomfortable. Aunt Susan glared at William, obviously disgusted by his behavior. In the tense atmosphere, Liam stepped forward. Clutching the small box, I want to speak, the boy declared, his voice clear and strong, making everyone startle. Margaret tried to force a condescending smile. Liam, the adults are discussing important matters. Go outside. But Liam stood firm, his brown eyes as resolute as James's when inspecting a work site. This is more important. It's about my dad and what he wanted. All eyes turned to the 9-year-old boy standing on the front line. Stephen put down his phone, looking directly at Liam for the first time. Dad taught me that when people reveal their true nature, you have to believe it, Liam said, his voice only slightly shaky. Real family doesn't demand money. They give love. He turned to William and Margaret. Grandma and Grandpa didn't come when Dad died. They didn't comfort Mom when she cried every night. They didn't ask if I was okay. They only came when they wanted Dad's money. Liam's words hit like a hammer, shattering the layer of hypocrisy. Margaret covered her face, her eyes glistening. William stood still, his lips pressed tightly, unable to respond. Liam opened the box, took out a piece of paper with a 3D print drawing on it, and placed it on the walnut table in front of the fireplace. "I made this for you," he said firmly. "Because I know you came for the money." I glanced over William's shoulder, seeing James's construction drawing, with a note in childish handwriting: "Dad's real family. Mom and Liam, no cost. Paternal grandparents, no comfort, no love, value, $0. At the bottom, Liam wrote, "Total, $0, this is what you get." The room was utterly silent, only the crackle of wood in the fireplace audible. William's hand trembled as he held the paper, his eyes blurring. Margaret burst into tears, but I didn't care if it was shame or calculation. Stephen stared at Liam, mouth agape as if seeing his nephew for the first time. I took Liam's hand and whispered, "We don't need them, honey." I looked straight at William and Margaret. "Don't contact us again unless you apologize and genuinely change. Liam deserves better grandparents, and I deserve a better family." We walked out of the house, the Evanston sunset streaming through the oak trees, painting the road gold. The door closed, leaving a heavy silence. Liam hugged me, his face wet with tears. As William and Margaret walked out of our lives, I wondered, was this the end of all the suffering, or just the beginning of a new war we were forced to win? The door closed behind us, leaving the stunned room behind. In the car, I hugged Liam tightly, tears rolling down my cheeks. "You were so brave," I said. "I'm proud of you." Liam hugged me back. "Dad said we have to stand up for what's right, no matter how hard it is." I drove back to Lincoln Park, the Lakeshore Drive freeway stretching beside the glittering Lake Michigan. The pain was still there, but mixed with a sense of freedom, as if we had just escaped a cage. We lost James, and now we lost the illusion of a loving extended family. But in the loss, I found clarity. We had each other, and James's legacy, love, strength, would guide us forward. Back home in Lincoln Park after the turbulent trip from Evanston, I felt a relief beginning to permeate the grief. Emily was already there, standing in the spacious kitchen. The stew was hot, and the warm herbal aroma filled the air. "I thought you two could use something warm tonight," she said, placing a dish on the wooden table. Her eyes reflected empathy, as if she understood we had just weathered a storm. "How is Liam?" Emily asked, as I opened my laptop to FaceTime George and Linda. "Stronger than I ever imagined," I replied, smiling as I remembered the boy standing before William and Margaret, placing the 3D drawing on the table. He silenced the entire room. The front door opened. Tom walked in, his jacket still dusty from the construction site. He had driven straight from Wisconsin, wanting to be with us after the family meeting. "I hear Liam made quite an impact," Tom said, winking at Liam, who was now sitting at his wooden desk, drawing a 3D design on his laptop, his eyes shining like James's. "I just did what Dad taught me," Liam said, not taking his eyes off the screen, "to show people they're wrong with something they understand." Tom chuckled, sitting on the sofa. "This kid is James incarnate. Once at the loop site, James checked the machinery 3 times before letting it run, just because he felt something wasn't right. Saved the whole crew from an accident. You know, Liam, your dad always put family and safety first." Tom's story brought James back into the room, if only for a moment. I started the FaceTime call. George and Linda's faces appeared, the light from their kitchen in Wisconsin reflecting off their graying hair. "Sarah, Liam, are you two okay?" Linda asked, her voice warm. "Emily told us you won big in Evanston." Liam looked up, beaming. "I showed Grandma and Grandpa they aren't real family." George nodded, his eyes sparkling. "You did so well, Liam. And Sarah, you are stronger than anyone we know. We are family, and we are always here for you both." Their words were a hug through the screen, soothing the wounds left by William and Margaret. My phone kept vibrating with messages from Margaret, William, and Stephen, ranging from accusations to fake apologies. I chose to answer one text from Margaret. "We need to talk." My reply was brief. "There is nothing to discuss until you acknowledge the harm you've caused and genuinely change." I put my phone down, watching Liam drawing at his desk, the laptop light illuminating his face. Emily poured more hot water into the teapot. Tom shared another story about James, and George's laughter echoed through FaceTime. We had lost so much, but the people who truly loved us, Emily, Tom, George, Linda, were helping us rebuild a new family, stronger than ever. Liam looked up, pointing at his 3D drawing. "Mom, I think Dad would like this. It's safe, just like he wanted." I smiled, my eyes shimmering with tears. "Your dad would be so proud, Liam, and so am I." After the confrontation in Evanston, I blocked William, Margaret, and Stephen's numbers, hoping for space for Liam and me to breathe. But they didn't stop. Just 1 week later, David, our lawyer, called from his downtown Chicago office. "Sarah, you need to come in immediately," he said, his voice strained. "William and Margaret just filed a lawsuit demanding 60% of James's insurance money. They claim their status as James's parents gives them the right to inherit." My heart sank, but anger quickly took over. They dared to drag James's legacy into court? I drove to David's office, navigating the busy Chicago streets, trying to stay calm for Liam. The office was on a high floor, with a polished oak desk and a large window overlooking the river bathed in the afternoon sun. David spread out a pile of papers pointing to James's will. "This is your shield," he said. James clearly stipulated in his will, "The entire insurance policy and retirement fund belong to you and Liam. Liam's separate fund only opens when he turns 25, excluding educational costs. William and Margaret have no legal basis. They are just trying to pressure you." I nodded, my hand gripping the chair. "They won't stop, will they?" David smiled slightly. "They can try, but this will is as strong as the concrete James used to build. I will present this to the court." The court hearing was swift. In the small courtroom in downtown Chicago, William and Margaret's lawyer argued that, as James's biological parents, they had the right to share his estate. But David calmly presented the will. Every line of James's handwriting was a declaration protecting our family. The judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes, reviewed the documents and announced, "There is no basis for this claim. The will is clear. The case is dismissed." As I left the courtroom, I breathed a sigh of relief, feeling as if a heavy stone had been lifted from my chest. "They can't touch James's legacy," I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. David patted my shoulder. "James prepared well for you and Liam. Now you can focus on the future." Back home in Lincoln Park, I told Liam. The boy, who was drawing a 3D design at his wooden desk, looked up and smiled. "Dad always said we have to do what's right, Mom, didn't he?" I nodded, pulling him into a hug. "Yes, honey, and he did right by us." Tom dropped by that evening bringing a pizza from Lou Malnati's, one of James's favorites. "Heard you won big in court," he said, winking. "James would be so proud you held on to his legacy." The next day, a box of cookies arrived from George and Linda via mail, along with a note. "Sarah, Liam, we are real family. So proud of you both." The smell of vanilla butter filled the kitchen, a reminder that, even though William and Margaret tried to pressure us, we had true loved ones by our side. Emily called, her voice bright. "You showed them no one messes with Liam and James. Now get some rest. You deserve it." I sat on the sofa, watching Liam draw in 3D, the laptop light illuminating his face. William and Margaret might continue, but with James's will, the support of Tom, George, Linda, Emily, and Liam's strength, I knew my son and I would get through this. The line had been drawn, and James's legacy, love and safety, would always be our foundation. The lawsuit was dismissed, but that was not the final victory. What I wanted to know wasn't about the money. What I wanted to know was, what was the motivation that drove them to betray us? And could that betrayal ever be forgiven? I wasn't ready to forgive, but a small door had opened. Emily taught Liam how to bake peanut butter cookies, the kind James always made on Sunday mornings. The buttery scent filled the Lincoln Park kitchen, drawing James back to us, if only in memory. George took Liam to a 3D design exhibition in downtown Chicago, patiently showing him how to use the software, just like James used to guide his son. Meanwhile, news of William and Margaret's behavior spread within the family. On Tuesday evening, my phone rang. Aunt Ellen called from Wisconsin. "I am so sorry I was at that meeting in Evanston," she said. Her voice choked. "I truly thought it was a gathering to support you both. I had no idea they planned to demand money." Uncle Richard, who had remained silent during the confrontation, sent a handwritten card, his script shaky. "I regret not speaking up when William went too far." I was wrong, Sarah. Even Stephen, the one who scrolled on his phone at the funeral, sent an email. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." Asking for the money then was bad timing. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the first time Stephen had acknowledged his mistake. 3 months after James's death, on what would have been our 10th wedding anniversary, an email from William and Margaret landed in my inbox. Not a letter, not a corporate document with a fancy logo, just a simple email, sent from Margaret's personal account. I opened the email, my heart pounding. "Dear Sarah and Liam," the message began. "We have spent the last few weeks reflecting on our behavior and the pain we caused during your unbearable loss. There is no excuse for what we did. We allowed greed and self-interest to overshadow our love and responsibility as parents and grandparents." The text continued, surprisingly specific. They admitted missing the funeral for Stephen's contract party, admitted trying to change the insurance beneficiary, and admitted that demanding 60% of the money was wrong. Unlike their previous apologies, which were full of vague language, this email was direct, not asking for forgiveness or a meeting. They simply wrote, "We hope that one day we can prove through action, not words, that we have changed." I read the email 3 times, trying to gauge its sincerity. Then I forwarded it to Emily, wanting her opinion before showing Liam. "It's different from the others," Emily messaged back cautiously. "Less manipulative, more accountable. But it's your decision whether to believe it." I saved the email. Not ready to reply, not ready to open my heart. The wound was still raw, the betrayal too deep. Time would tell whether they were truly repentant or just playing a new game. For now, Liam and I focused on healing, rebuilding life without James, but founded on his values: love, resilience, and kindness. Whatever William and Margaret wanted, only their actions would decide, not promises or emails, no matter how well written. Tom, who had just returned to Chicago from a work trip in Milwaukee, helped me organize a memorial gathering for James on his birthday. Unlike the heavy, formal funeral, this was a warm gathering at the park near our Lincoln Park home. We grilled burgers, the smell of smoke mingling with pizza from Lou Malnati's, James's favorite. Soft jazz played from a Bluetooth speaker, and friends and colleagues shared funny stories about James. George and Linda brought a photo album, flipping through pictures of young James when he built model bridges from popsicle sticks. Liam presented a short video he made on his laptop, combining photos and clips, James teaching him 3D drawing, the two of them laughing at the construction site, and a clip of James saying, "Every worker deserves to go home safe." William, Margaret, and Stephen were not invited. I needed a safe space for grief and memory, free from the tension of their presence. As guests began to leave, Liam tugged on my sleeve, standing under the faint street lamp. "Mom, can we invite Grandpa and Grandma next time?" he asked, his voice small but certain. "Which grandparents, honey?" I asked, though I knew whom he meant. "Grandpa William and Grandma Margaret," Liam clarified. "The ones who wanted the money. I think Dad would want us to give them a chance if they are really sorry." Liam's compassion, so much like James's, made my eyes sting. "I'll think about it, honey," I promised. "If they prove they've changed, maybe next time." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a door slightly ajar, a possibility that the future might hold some reconciliation. For now, that was enough. The confrontation in Evanston had marked a turning point, and we were learning to move forward, carrying James's legacy in every beat of our hearts. The marital family split like a crack in a bridge James once built. After the confrontation in Evanston, some relatives sided with William and Margaret, viewing me as ungrateful, turning their backs on family duty. Aunt Susan frowned at Thanksgiving, whispering, "Sarah, you should support your in-laws." But many others saw their demand for money as fundamentally wrong, quietly sending me hugs via text messages like headlights cutting through the Chicago night. Aunt Ellen became an unexpected ally. She called every Wednesday, asking about Liam's eating habits and sharing stories about their new dog without pushing for reconciliation. Uncle Richard, naturally reserved, sent Liam books on bridge engineering and model kits, remembering his love for 3D drawing, just like James. The biggest surprise was an email from Anna, Stephen's 23-year-old daughter, 7 weeks after the meeting. "I've seen my grandparents favor my dad since I was little," Anna wrote. "Their abandonment of you and Liam after Uncle James died is unforgivable. Not everyone in the family thinks you're wrong for protecting Liam." Anna's words were like a warm coffee on a cold, rainy day, validating that I wasn't crazy for prioritizing my son's future. William and Margaret didn't give up easily. They launched a manipulation campaign, asking Aunt Susan to call and plead, telling me to think of the family. They sent emails full of blame, even contacting Liam's school, asking the teacher about the mother and son situation, as if I were incapable of raising him. When that failed, they threatened to sue over James's will, despite David, our lawyer, asserting they had no grounds. David counterattacked from his office overlooking the Chicago River. He sent a lawyer's letter, sharp as steel, clarifying that James's will was airtight and unchallengeable, and warning of the consequences if they continued the harassment. The direct pressure subsided, but the pain of the betrayal still festered, like the sound of rain tapping on the Lincoln Park roof. Amidst the storm, loved ones stepped up. James's colleagues at the Loop construction site established a college fund for Liam, separate from the one James left. Miss Helen, a retired literature teacher and neighbor, sat with Liam every afternoon, helping him with homework when grief made him lose focus. My boss at the architectural firm allowed me to work remotely so I could take Liam to counseling sessions. 6 months after James's passing, Tom returned to Chicago. In the cozy kitchen space, the distinctive aroma of pizza from Lou Malnati's drifted from a paper box. He announced, "I'm moving back for good. My company in Milwaukee gave me a new project starting in September." "You're really leaving Wisconsin?" I asked, eyes wide. Tom nodded, winking at Liam, who was currently designing a 3D model on his laptop. "James made me promise to look after you both. It'll be easier in the same city." Tom didn't try to replace James, but he brought him back through small moments. The way he told construction stories, laughed loudly when Liam spilled sauce, or muttered when his tea got cold. It was startlingly like James. Liam started smiling more, finding the light through the evenings spent with Uncle Tom. On Liam's 10th birthday, 4 months after the Evanston meeting, a package arrived from William and Margaret. Not a brightly colored toy car like before, but a book on bridge design, exactly Liam's taste. The accompanying email admitted they had hurt us, asked for neither money nor forgiveness, only to see Liam for 15 minutes on his birthday, in a public place of my choosing, with me always present. I read the email on the sofa, the dim light illuminating the framed photo of James and Liam smiling at a construction site. "Liam, your grandparents want to see you on your birthday," I said, as he sat at his desk, adjusting his 3D model. "What do you think?" Liam paused, his brown eyes reflecting wariness. "If you're there, I agree. But only 15 minutes, no more." I replied to the email, setting a boundary as sharp as a knife. "This is your only chance. Do not overstep. Everything depends on your behavior." I chose Millennium Park, beneath the autumn oaks, where golden leaves fell scattered near the cloud gate, the sun shining on the lawn. A gentle breeze from Lake Michigan blew softly, carrying the fresh scent of grass after the rain. The meeting took place at 3 p.m. Liam played baseball, keeping a safe distance. William asked about the bridge book, his voice overly cautious. Suddenly, Margaret reached for her purse. My instinct made me rush forward, ready to protect Liam. "Just a small gift," she said, pulling out a book on bridge design. But her eyes darted toward me too quickly. Too calculating. Was this truly reconciliation or just a new tactic? As they left, Liam ran to me, grabbing my hand and whispered, "They really tried, didn't they, Mom?" "Perhaps, honey," I replied, watching the golden leaves fall onto the walkway. Not forgiveness, not yet. But it was a small ray of sunlight through the oak canopy, a faint hope that things could be different. Under the shadow of the oak trees in Millennium Park, no one mentioned money or Evanston. William and Margaret kept their word, only asking Liam about his classes and the 3D models he was drawing on his laptop. William nodded slowly as Liam described the bridge he was designing, and Margaret looked at him, her eyes gentle but cautious, as if afraid to break the moment. They had prepared well, and that effort, though awkward, was something I hadn't expected. As they left, William stood by the lawn, his voice low. "Can we see Liam again? Maybe next month?" There was no demand, only a question, as if he understood that seeing his grandson was a privilege, not a right. Golden leaves scattered near the cloud gate, and I replied, "I'll see. I will be in touch." That statement paved the way for more short, tightly controlled meetings in the following months. William and Margaret seemed to be in a trial period. They didn't ask to see Liam without me, they didn't mention the insurance, and gradually demonstrated through action that they recognized the pain they had caused. I observed, just as James used to check the cables at the construction site, waiting to see if they were genuine. 1 year after James's death, I held a memorial service at Grant Park. Unlike the confrontation in Evanston, I invited William and Margaret, emphasizing this was a major test. They arrived wearing simple sweaters, bringing a notebook James once wrote in, notes on construction safety in his hurried handwriting. They stood at the back, blending in with friends and colleagues, quietly remembering James, not trying to be the center of attention. After the ceremony, Margaret approached, clutching a cup of coffee. "We are seeing a family counselor," she said, her voice slightly shaky, "to understand why we were wrong, not just after James died, but also how we treated you before. It's been a wake-up call. It wasn't a miracle. There were still awkward moments, but their consistency, like the rhythm of a bridge James built, allowed a new relationship to slowly form, one based on respect, not obligation. Stephen was slower to change. Cut off, he posted bitter remarks online, calling me a money hoarder, pulling Aunt Susan against me. But as William and Margaret corrected their behavior, he became the outlier. 10 months later, he texted, suggesting a meeting at Lou Malnati's. "I've been jealous of you and James for a long time," he said, avoiding looking at the cold slice of pizza. "You're smart. James was talented, and I was just chasing contracts." When James left the money to you and Liam, I felt inadequate. "It doesn't excuse it, but I'm trying to fix things." That frank conversation didn't mend things instantly, but it opened a small door for the future. In the midst of the healing journey, I partnered with the Chicago Union to establish the James Safety Training Program. We held sessions at the Lincoln Park Community Center, where whiteboards were covered in notes and folding chairs squeaked whenever a worker sat down. I stood before the crowd, talking about James's dream. "Every worker deserves to go home safe." Emily and Tom helped print posters, hanging them throughout the center, creating a warm atmosphere like a Sunday kitchen. Liam contributed by designing 3D models for the program. He spent hours on his laptop, creating a bridge with safety cables, meeting the standards James taught. At school, Liam presented the model to his class, his eyes shining with pride as his classmates applauded. "This is for my dad," he said firmly. Looking at him, I saw James, not just in his smile, but in his compassion and attention to detail. The pain of losing James still lingered, but it was softer, like the gentle lapping of Lake Michigan waves. Liam still cried for his father at night sometimes, but he also had days filled with laughter, arguing with friends about baseball or showing off his new model. 2 years after James's passing, I took Liam to the lakeshore, where he used to stand and look at the water. The wind blew, carrying the scent of the lake and memories, and we sat on a stone bench. "Mom," Liam said, watching the sparkling waves, "I think Dad would love the safety program, right?" I squeezed his hand, smiling. "Absolutely, honey. He wanted everyone to be safe, especially you." The sadness remained, but James's legacy, through Liam, through the program, was the light guiding us forward. On the outdoor stage at Grant Park, the Chicago wind blew, rustling the Union flags. I stood before the crowd of workers, the autumn sun shining on the lawn, where Liam sat next to Tom and Emily. Today marked James's memorial, 2 years after his passing. The Chicago Union flag was waving, bearing the motto, "Safety is family." I took a deep breath, pressing the play button on my laptop. James's voice rang out, clear, as if he were right there. "Need to replace the drill on the west shaft, or someone will die." The crowd went silent. "James warned the company 3 times, I said, my voice slightly shaking. But they ignored him. He stopped the machinery, saving the whole crew. That is the legacy he left behind. I continued. James took Liam to the construction site when he was only 7. He pointed to the safety cables and said, "Every worker deserves to go home safe." Liam stepped onto the stage, holding the 3D model he designed for the safety program. "Dad wanted us to be strong," he said, his voice firm, his eyes shining like James's. "Help others, but don't let anyone take advantage of you." The crowd applauded, a few people wiping their eyes. I squeezed Liam's shoulder, my heart warm. He was James's light, not just in his smile, but in his compassion. After the ceremony, my phone lit up with social media messages from workers. "James saved me in 2019 by stopping the machinery when the cable was loose. This program is his legacy." I read it out loud to Liam, my heart pounding. Dozens of other messages came in, recounting how James had protected them. The next day, a call came from an unknown number. The voice of an older man choked with emotion. "If it weren't for James, I would have died 3 years ago when the excavator malfunctioned at the loop site." When I learned he passed, I couldn't stay silent. "Your program is what James lived for." I held Liam's hand, tears silently falling. Each word was a brick, building James's legacy. Losing James was like a hurricane, revealing who our true family was. William and Margaret, who once plotted to steal the insurance money, were now cautious figures, trying to regain trust. They stood at the back of the crowd today, applauding when Liam spoke. Aunt Ellen, Uncle Richard, and Anna were pillars of support, loving us not out of obligation. The union workers, James's colleagues, and Tom, the uncle who took Liam to 3D exhibitions, formed a new family, as sturdy as a bridge James built. The insurance money William once targeted remained untouched, used only for living expenses and Liam's education fund. Money was valuable, but James's true legacy was the safety program, now extended to 4 community centers, and the values he passed on: kindness, resilience, and love guiding our way. George and Linda, James's parents, loved Liam like their own son, providing warm hugs. And Liam and I had each other, bonded by pain and strength forged in Evanston. The healing journey was not linear. Sometimes at night I would wake up, my hand searching for James, or planning to tell him about Liam winning the 3D prize, only to remember he was gone. The pain was like a scar, sharp but not imprisoning. We carried James through the boundaries I set, the models Liam drew, and the program saving workers' lives. As we left Grant Park, Liam held my hand, walking through the fallen golden leaves. "Mom, I think Dad is proud that we are keeping the program running, right?" "Absolutely, honey," I replied, smiling. "He is always here, in every step we take." My family today is not what I dreamed of, but it is enduring, built on love and respect. If you've ever been betrayed by family in a time of loss, or had to set boundaries with those who should have sheltered you, I hope this story reminds you, you are not alone. Protecting yourself and those you love is not selfish, it is necessary. Family are the people who stand by you, respect you, and truly love you. On the park lawn, Liam ran over, holding the 3D model. "Mom, I want to place this in the center, so everyone remembers Dad." Seeing his radiant smile, I saw James and knew his legacy would live on, through every beat of our hearts. The clock still stopped at 10:23. It was no longer a symbol of tragic death, but a reminder that we won a battle, but found an eternal love. Every time I looked at it, I saw James smiling, the smile of an engineer who protected both his family and justice. Thank you for following us through this tearful battle. We have witnessed how a 9-year-old boy used a $0 value 3D message to defeat greed, and how James's true legacy, the safety training program, saved hundreds of workers' lives. If you believe that love must triumph over greed, that every worker deserves to go home safe, and that true family is built on respect, not blood, sign up now to help us spread James's legacy. The next part of the story will make you believe that you always have the strength to stand up. After all, should Liam give William and Margaret a second chance? Comment "forgive" if you think they deserve forgiveness, boundary if Sarah should protect Liam from them forever, or justice to support James's safety program. Every comment you make matters.